about upsetting. Basic mechanics of upsetting. I'm just going to deal with the direct upsetting of pushing in the end of a piece of square bar, getting it to swell out. The basic mechanics of this is driving the energy straight into the tip of the material, getting it to swell, and then controlling it. But you don't want to over control it to the point that you're basically undoing what you've done. So you're always playing this little backing and forth, trying to keep it stabilized, but not overworking it, and so losing the swelling that you've created. You can also look at things like square corners. Those are upsetting as well, but in a 90-degree plane. We're just going to deal with the straight on square stuff. So your bar is here. You have got to create an anchor for that. That anchor might be your thigh, it might be your arm, it might be your thumb pushing down on it, it might be the angle from above and you strike on it. But you've got to work out the most efficient way of transferring that energy through. I've actually used a leg vise pulled off its stand for monkeying shoulders on tenons in railing. I've also used it for setting the heads of the rivets for those monkeyed tenons on railings. So that is my energy source of stability by putting, a 100-pound leg vise or a 50-pound leg vise behind it, so when you whack on the thing, you don't go anywhere. So understand, you strike here, this has to go outwards because this is softer. You've created a backward force of inertia, being your body or whatever else it might be, and this must swell in your glowing area. So if we say that all of this is glowing. If you're out into the cold area, it's not going to move. Also, with that in mind, make sure that you have enough heat in your material. Hey kitty. Make sure you got enough heat in your material to get that to swell. There's no point in working this cold, it isn't going to move. And again, upsetting is best done in a cold forge, but we'll do it in gas. So I've got a really long heat on this. I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just going to start upsetting, driving that material back in. Notice I'm turning it every once in a while, 90 degrees, because my energy from my hammer is not 100% straight linear through the bar. So with straightening, try to square that tip up a little bit. It's got a little off angle. And drop, touch of the tip in there. So the reason I'm dropping a bit of a tip in is to center that energy through the bar. And it also stops me from getting the giant elephant foot issue if you're trying to swell a larger section of material. If you don't just want spread, but you actually want to create volume in the shaft of the bar, you need to put a bit of a point on there so that this will drive back. What it does is it causes this shoulder here to start upsetting into this area. Okay. Back for another heat. Don't get too excited, stick that thing in there too far. So now we should have something like this. And just in the same way as if you're putting a taper on the back end of a chisel or a center punch or something like that, that centers the energy and helps drive it inside the bar stop. That's what this does. Narrowing that face creates less diversion of the energy source. So even if your hammer blow is a little wonky and you're coming off slightly that way, you're going to get more centered energy transfer through because that face is more linear through that part. If you have a big wide thing, like this, and you have a wonky hammer blow over here, that does not drive energy through the center. What it'll do is it'll bend that down. Okay? little faults, you can actually cool sections down. If you want to, you can chill this very, very tip. You can also chill back here. So those are additional options. And grab a little water and actually chill a little bit of that bar stock in the shaft. And hopefully that'll help control that energy. So you can squeeze out from behind, that holds your mass into this area, your heat mass, and that will make this swell more rather than driving back into here. So I've got a hotness in my shaft. Pull from both sides. I'm going to get a quick dip on that tip there, which may or may not have cooled it off. The only problem with this is, as you can tell, you lose a lot of heat just because you're mucking around with stuff. It really works effectively if you're working in larger section, like 1 inch plus. It just really gives you that extra thermal mass in there to be able to play around with controlling the heat areas. So at the end of that heat, you'll notice how it didn't travel back into here, and that fattening occurred more in this portion. I lost my point again, so I would drive that back in, okay? But it's really helped me just to keep that maintained into that zone. Have a look at my crib notes. You'll notice this. Just flip around to the crib notes here. So what I'd like you to see is these dark yellow ones on all these sheets, right? Those go back to the very, very first video that we did on the 15 points about making tapers. The base principles never change, no matter what you're doing. You know, you might be putting a taper on, you might be upsetting, you might be spreading. The same principles are always coming in. So, hammer angle. Hammer angle on this one is 90 degrees, driving into the tip of that bar, trying to transfer all that energy through that bar to create swelling. Bisect angle or not, no, but at the same time, if you are not striking with the center of the face, which is kind of what the bisecting of angle is, so in other words, if I'm coming in like this or like this, the energy traveling through this hammerhead starts deferring out of the bar. This is kind of a weird concept, right? So in my head, this is how I look at energy. You have, let's get rid of all this malarkey. You have the energy of your hammer, right? And your hammer is not a linear arc or a linear line, because you don't hammer dead straight like this. You hammer with this arc. So the hammer's coming through something like this and striking into, at this point, into the tip of the bar. And all being well, that energy as it strikes is perfectly in line with that bar stop, and it goes ding, all the way through it. You get this perfect transference, the bar goes doink, and all the energy goes into increasing that volume. If your hammer blow is starting to come upwards, right? So your arc is like this. Even though you hit with a perfectly flat face in the middle of that bar, the energy is not linear. It's now doing this. What happens when it does that? It makes the bar bend upwards. Okay? And likewise, if you're too short on the curve and you're in this portion over here, it's coming down like that, even though that face is perfectly perpendicular to the end of that bar, it is now pushing the energy downwards. And then you've got the problem of the fact that I'm right-handed and I don't have a hammer arm out of the middle of my head, so it's not doing this. It's coming from over here, so as my hammer blow comes in, I want it to be this. but in fact it's doing this. So that energy goes doink, runs out to the side. So despite all of these wonderful things, you're trying your damnedest to transfer that energy into the tip of the bar with the best return for that hammer swing. And that's why you've got to keep turning it, you've got to keep controlling that tip, keeping everything in order. Anyway, that was me ranting for a little bit. I'll pop that tip back on there. When you drive your tip back in, hit it hard. If you hit this softly, you'll actually upset it. You'll do a weird thing, right? If you hit that without sufficient force, you're going to cause that material, remember we were talking and spreading, you're going to cause that material to do this number, right? So from the top face, this is looking at the bar end on, you strike down like this and it goes, then you turn it 90 degrees, go, and what you actually end up doing is creating a bird mouth in the end of the bar whilst trying to put a taper in it. You're not moving that energy to the core. You've got to drive that hammer in there. Again, this is an energy issue. If you stop at the surface, it goes outwards. If you go into the anvil, it goes through the bar stop. The energy dissipates into the anvil, returns back through, and the core of the material pops. So when you've driven properly, you'll see how this has got a rounded tip on it, right? That's because the core of the material has moved rather than just the surface. And if you keep pushing that surface, that beautiful plump end is going to wind up as a cavity, or as we like to refer to it, as a cat butt. Nobody wants cat butts. All right, enough of the ranting. Cooling off that shaft again. Not going to bother with cooling the tip. It did benefit me greatly. And drive on it. This will wear a hole in your thumb. So I got my thumb pressed down on it like crazy. Okay, now. I want you to see the tip of this bar. So, this is something I actually do intentionally. This will probably be the last bit. But you'll notice I've kind of headed a little bit of a pyramid on there. So what I do is I push, because I know my hammer blow isn't true. I push at a slight angle, that builds the corners up, I then drive the very, very center. And then I'll build the corners, drive the center, build the corners, drive the center. And it's almost subconscious, but it does actually help reducing that mushrooming and it helps stabilize it a little bit. Okay? So yeah, that is the basic mechanics of it. Upsetting isn't that complicated. It's more about just keeping your eye on what is going on, keeping the bar stock in a linear format to accept the energy, and make sure that you're driving that energy in true and solid. Notice up here, bends in here, straight into the bar stock. So if you've got a bit starting to flare off, push it back down, get that energy back transferred through the bar stock again. Okay, mechanical principles are next.